You're listening to episode 108 of the Play Therapy Community Podcast.
Welcome to Play Therapy Community Podcast, providing connection, information, and inspiration to child therapists all around the world. Here's your host, a licensed psychotherapist, a registered play therapist, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
Well, hey, Dr. Altvater, thank you so much for being on our Play Therapy Community Podcast. I just adore everything that you do. I first met you at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I just fell in love with your energy, your passion for play therapy, and your authenticity. It's actually been a game changer and very influential in my life. And now I have this book, Perspective, that you written right at the time of this recording. It came out, I think, about a month ago, and it is amazing. I read it, a few pieces I read several times just so I could let it sink in. You know, when you read things a few times, it can kind of have different meaning each time. So I'm excited to just explore some of the key pieces in there and our conversation. So before we get started, let me have you just tell people who you are and what you do.
I'm Rachel. And it's so funny. I was like, where does my mind go first? I'm a human. That's literally what my brain thought. And I was like, we're going to go with it. We're going to go with it. But yeah, come as we are. But I'm a licensed psychologist. I'll go into the professional realm for a second, and then we'll come back to the personal realm. But I'm a licensed psychologist in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And I am the owner of a practice called Creative Psychological Health Services. We have 2 locations in Maryland, and we also provide virtual services to Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And actually, I have a interjurisdictional practice through a SIPACT, so I'm able to provide services even further, which is really exciting. I only bring that up because another big passion of mine is virtual and digital therapy, specifically digital play therapy and working online with other humans. So I always like to say I sprinkle myself everywhere. I like to be involved and volunteer and mentor and supervise and teach and all the things. So I just sprinkle a little Rachel here, sprinkle a little Rachel there. But really the answer is I'm a human who's very passionate, a highly sensitive individual who cares very deeply for people. And I use that connection and compassion to really hopefully make an impact in this world.
Oh, when you say you sprinkle yourself, I'm picturing like confetti. Beautiful, like colorful, just like fun confetti that just gives just this feel good energy inside of us. I know you're talking about like your realm into the online world, and I know that's not the topic of what we're talking about today, but I do want to give a big shout out about how that influenced me as well. You and Dr. Jessica Stone, your work has really opened my eyes to the value of using digital tools in therapy in a way that I think it allows us to enter into spaces and give access to therapy in ways that wouldn't be possible otherwise. So big shout out to the digital play therapy of Dr. Jessica Stones, and just how you and her just opened my eyes to just not only the possibilities of online therapy, but teaching us how to do it in a way that has changed lives for real. It's good stuff.
I'm going to sit with that, and something that I'm thinking right now, and something that I highlight in the book that might come up throughout our discussion, is the ripples that we create in this world, right? Yeah. And that every ripple that we create, that we either knowingly or unknowingly create, kind of pushes into the next ripple and pushes into the next ripple. And we never really know how far our ripples expand. And so there's been quite a few things that you've mentioned throughout the past couple of years of just the impact that I don't really realize, and how monumental it's been. And then other people who have made such monumental impacts on my life and just the ripples that it creates. Really, we all kind of do our part in the ripples of the world, and we don't always really realize where they go. But they make an impact, a significant one.
Girl, you're giving me the feels. I'm starting to feel like I'm going to tear up.
I'm black for number two, so it's fine. Become as we are. Become as we are. This is how right?
I'm picturing like the concentric circles when you throw a stone in the pond or it starts to rain. Ooh, when it starts to rain. In fact, as you say that, and I'm picturing that, I'm thinking this is the book right here that you've written, Perspective. This book, the cover of it is just the most beautiful thing. And I think about like the reflective energy. You're talking about ripples and, take that water metaphor, that big body of water metaphor to a deeper level. Can you talk about the cover of the Perspective book that you've written?
Yeah. So there is an absolutely phenomenal artist, an Italian artist, and I might be pronouncing his name incorrectly, so apologies if so. I really do care about pronouncing correctly, and I haven't actually spoken it directly. So I think it's David Bonazzi, be my guess. And fancy. It does sound fancy. I was connected to his art through a friend of a friend who had shared something on social media, and I was obsessed. I'm a very obsessed person. I don't say that lightly. I am. I get very obsessed about things, and was quite obsessed with his art and followed him. And a lot of the different art is, oh goodness, I don't even know how to articulate it because I feel it. But the imagery in his art is so mentally stimulating. I cannot find words. I just find feels for it. Yeah. And I just knew when I was going to pursue a cover for the book, I had to ask him. It's one of those things you just go for it. Like, this person lives in Italy. Like, who am I? Like, hey, knock, knock, love your art. Can you, like, I don't know, do a cover art for me? Wow. But I just went for it. I mean, that's just something I've learned in life. You just go for it, right? Like, something I always say, the answer is always no unless you ask. And if you ask and the answer is no, you are right where you are. So what have you lost? Genuinely nothing. Oh, that's good. So I figured, yeah. I mean, it helps. It just helps push through some of these things that we convince ourselves that we can't do. Well, it's going to be a no. Okay, well, it's already a no right now. So we're not going to change anything if we ask and it's still no. But the amount of times that I've asked things, I'm going to give a shout out to Dr. Eliana Gill, who, and Dr. Jessica Stone. They both changed the trajectory of my career because I just asked a question and they both were willing to partake. Wow. And I mean, when I reached out, I thought, like, again, who am I? Right. Minimizing. And this is all about perspective, how we see ourselves. This is going to definitely morph to such a beautiful conversation. I can't wait. Yes. Hold on to your seats, your drinks, I like to say. But I mean, just go for it, because we get in our own way more than anything. So I'm venturing away from the cover, but it's all relevant. It's just my little ripple thoughts. But yeah, I mean, I thought his artwork was just so amazing. And there's a lot of different, like, seemingly like mental health covers that he has done or not just covers, but like artwork for magazines and just in general. And I just was so fascinated. And so, like I said, I reached out to his agent, and then he was like, yeah, sure. Oh, okay. That's great. And then I sent a paragraph. Okay. One paragraph of the book. And he sent 4 different covers, including that one. Wow. I'm telling you, that came from a paragraph. I'm like emphasizing that because that's how talented he is. Yeah. That I didn't say, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want. I'm like, you are a phenomenal artist. I respect your work tremendously. I'm obsessed with it. And he created that. And it was exactly, actually probably honestly surpassed my expectations, but exactly what I wanted. It's so interesting. I know this is more than what you asked, but here we are. We have a consciousness coming. But I have a what's it called? A notepad in my phone. And I have one that's titled Brain Vomit. Okay, welcome to my brain. It is literally brain vomit. And when I have different thoughts, ideas, interests, whatever just pops into my head, I will write it in my brain vomit list. So on February 14th, I don't know why, it wasn't Valentine's Day. There was no relevance to that. It just so happened on February 14th, 2021, I had the idea to start the book.
Okay.
And I just wrote it. I said, write perspective. And then I specifically wrote something reflective on the cover. Like that was one of the first bullet points of my brain vomit. And so when I got this as one of the options, and it had the face and it had just the imagery, I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. All of the imagery on this cover that I was able to pick out just from looking at it is phenomenal. Perspective is all about how we see the world, right? So the brain illuminating is all about, this is how I'm seeing it, right? The artist, who knows what the vision was from the paragraph, but this aligns beautifully. Just being able to be enlightened within our own selves. And I love that there are two little boats. There's a person in each of the boats, and they're meeting together. And it's fascinating. This was intentional. It's right by the mouth, which for me is all about really speaking and understanding one another and understanding ourselves. So the person inside the boat, inside of the reflective head, I kind of perceive that myself as our inner self. And then the one on the outside, I perceive as someone trying to understand who we are. Again, different people are going to interpret art different ways, right? I didn't create this. So this is just how I'm interpreting it. It doesn't necessarily mean this is the meaning, right? It's all about perspective. But when I saw this, I was just like, this is beyond what yes. So that was the original art. And then I ended up delegating to have somebody actually design the cover. I had some ideas of wanting like the title to reflect and things, but the words on there was actually done by somebody else.
Now, if you are listening to this and you're driving or you're somewhere where you can't look at the cover, just when you get a chance, when you're stopped and you're at a place, definitely Google Dr. Rachel Altvater Perspective and look at this beautiful cover. It is just beyond belief. I love the words. The tagline of the actual title says, "Contemplating the complexities of our realities." And it's like the coming from the top of the head. It's so good. And it's so very telling. I think representative of what's in the book. Like there's so much underneath of what's going on top. It's kind of like that iceberg metaphor, but in a different way.
Oh, absolutely. And another layer too is the reflective piece and how important it is for us to reflect inward and to really understand other people for who they are, how they're reflecting, to truly, truly understand another person's position, to truly, truly understand ourselves. Like that reflective, that introspective piece is really needed.
Yeah, I love how you talk about like sometimes people like assume that they know who someone is and what they stand for through generalizations. It really kind of makes me think of like Bonnie Botnock's work where she talks about we're wired to be together. We're not designed to be alone. So to have that reflection is like that connection. And if we assume that somebody is one way, then we're really missing out on getting to know humanity. And you do make a mention too in the book about like important decisions are made on assumptions that are incorrect sometimes. So this isn't just a nice fluffy thing. This is like the answer to like correcting a lot of the kind of injustices in the world as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there absolutely is a social justice and social reform framework. The third section of the book is actually called Rebuilding the Foundation. So the hope is I'll start. The first section is origins. That's how we come to understand perspective. I just want to give context. The second section is reflecting inward, and that's really understanding self and others, and just us as human beings. And then the third section is rebuilding the foundation. So how can we come together to be in our position and understand that another person's position is completely different perhaps from ours. And so many times we are so convinced by our position, whether it be accurate or inaccurate, it's reality for us. So from our perspective, it's accurate. And sometimes we're so convinced by that position that we disregard another person's reality. And it might just be completely different from ours. It doesn't make it wrong, and it doesn't make ours right. And it doesn't make ours wrong and theirs right. It just is. And so it's really being able to lean into one another and understand more, and then establish a more cohesive perspective. What I mean by that is not replacing how each person thinks, but allowing it to really come to the table and for all of the perspectives to enhance our collective perspective.
Oh, that's so good. So being receptive to somebody's idea that's not like yours, not having this egocentric, like it's my way or the highway. there's some other good, valuable pieces. Now, on page 60 of the book, I was going through this before we met, thinking like out of everything, what were the pieces that I like stopped and I paused and I'm like, oh my goodness, let me read that again. And this magic mirror really caught my attention. Would it be okay if I read this and then we just kind of discuss that? Okay, so magic mirror. We witness our lives through the first person perspective. Mirrors afford us the ability to see our reflection, stepping into the position of an outsider, allowing us to experience a shifted point of view. What do we see when we look in the mirror? How accurately do we see ourselves? How often are others playing the role of the mirrors in our lives? How much of what we see comes from others have told us about ourselves from this disposition? Are we looking at others and learning about ourselves, or are we looking at and within ourselves? Oh, girl, that would give me chills. How can we accurately decipher our perspective, where our perspectives come from? That kind of hit home because I think I've evolved. Like we recorded for the Innovative Child Therapy Symposium pretty much like every year, but 2 years ago, at the time of this recording, you mentioned that at a time in my life when I really needed to hear it. I don't know why this is making me emotional. But when I made those changes, I was like, am I operating from like my own values, or am I just trying to like people please and make someone else happy based on what they think I should do? And that was a game changer. Just that awareness was like, oh my goodness, it brought that kind of lifelong pattern to the light. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. I was like, wow, that was empowering. So that's what I got out of that paragraph, the magic mirror. What was your hope, or what, I guess, can you say more about that? Because you may have had a different, it's just like art. I think we all take what we need to hear.
Oh, and I just keep thinking about the word perspective within perspective, right? Like we're going to take different pieces that resonate with us, and then we're going to digest those pieces of information maybe a little bit differently than somebody else.
Yes.
Because of maybe what we need or what aligns with us, which is also so important. I promise I'll answer your question.
No, this
we're
is
gonna
good stuff.
of consciousness first. But yeah, I mean, how many times, no, I guess this really does kind of answer your question though. How many times do we operate from somebody else's perspective? Yes. So ultimately we grow up understanding self, others, in the world from how we're told. In part how we're told, and then in part it's sensory perception, right? So from infancy, from when we're toddlers, we really are learning about the world through our senses. We come to understand things based on how we're absorbing the information through what we see, through what we hear, through what we smell, through what we touch, we taste, and we make meaning from that. And then as we form words, we are understanding things based on how we're being taught about it. So that becomes factual for us. That's face value, because at that point in time, we're not necessarily thinking, I'm going to speak generally speaking, but I'm sure there are different circumstances that might ultimately alter this for some people. We're not going to necessarily question the things that we are digesting,
Yeah.
figuratively speaking, or honestly, literally speaking, if we're talking about senses, right? Because this just is. So how many times are we absorbing all this information that's not real? And
Ooh.
by real, I mean not accurate, right? Or not reality in the way reality is from an absolute sense.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know that. So
Yeah.
then we start to form this idea of who we are or who somebody else is or how the world is from what we're told, how we're taught. And then we start to go about the world in that manner. Now, as we grow older and our cognitive abilities shift, then, we might challenge some of that or enhance it in different ways. But to our core,
Yeah.
our core being, our core relationships are founded on these building blocks. And so
Oh,
how many times have we observed these things about ourselves, these things, experiences, thoughts, feelings, I'm just going to say things, right?
yeah.
But how many times have we absorbed things in our life that we have no idea to the core isn't really true? I give an example about trauma in the book and how, like, let's say there's a caregiver who has experienced trauma and is struggling with attachment as a result, and then struggles to attach to the child. The child is significantly more egocentric, just developmentally speaking.
Yeah.
The world revolves around me because that's where we are developmentally at that time. So the child starts to absorb responsibility. Oh, my caregiver doesn't like me because I'm bad or because I'm doing something wrong, right? And then they form this core belief of who they are based on how other people respond to them.
Oh,
Right. And this is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy 101, but to put it into perspective,
yeah. That
quite
word.
literally speaking. um, but the concept, right? Like, to put into perspective, we are forming an idea of who we are based on how other people are telling us about
Oh,
ourselves. How many times are we the recipient of somebody else's projection and we don't even know it?
wow.
Somebody has their own stuff
Yeah.
going on, and this is how they move about the world. This is how they interact with other people because that's just how they are. And then people around them absorb that and then take that, as if it's
Personally.
a reflection of they are, versus
Oh,
recognizing, oh, this is your stuff. A child is not going to say, excuse me, caregiver, this is your stuff. I'm not going to take that on there like, I'm bad.
it's just their
And then
truth. Oh my
oh,
goodness. So it's like someone's cognitions, how they show up in the world. And when people treat us a certain kind of way based on whatever their stuff is, it really isn't about us. It's about whatever they've went through. I think about, like, we were just talking about, like, as clinicians that can show up as like having a hard time. I remember when I first started out in private practice, I was nervous to bill someone. I was like, I feel bad charging money. They just need help. I felt greedy and almost like a bad person for charging. And I would apologize. I'm so sorry, but I have to. And I was like, what's going on here? So I got therapy for it. And it was more of like, it rooted down to when I grew up as really, really in like poor conditions. There was this kind of message that people that have money are greedy and somehow are different from the rest of us. So that showed up and I didn't even know it. So it's stuff like that can, even thinking about, like, you have clients that say, oh, we just don't go to college in our family. I'm not smart enough to go to college, or, yeah, I could never have a car like that, or I could never, meet a woman like that, or, have a friend that cares about me. There's all these beliefs that are like on the truth scale, like pegging over when reality it's just what was embedded through their experiences. It's so good.
Oh, absolutely. And this goes back to what I was saying about the answer is always no unless you ask. Because we tell ourselves these stories, right? These narratives, and then we convince ourselves that they're true, and they might be. And it might be rooted in some fact in some situations, but it doesn't make it absolute reality 100% of the time. And so we operate so many times throughout life in a manner that is limiting, that is degrading, that is minimizing of in some way, because we don't see ourselves as worthy for one reason or another. And then other people it might be the other side of the spectrum. But I think a lot of the humans that I'm talking to right now who are listening can resonate with that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It truly like shapes who we think we are. And that's in that mirror. And what did you call that section? Magic mirror. There's like a aha moment that can, gosh, when you say mirror, I just had this image of like when you're at a carnival and all these like weird shapes. It's like, am I really that tall? Am I really that short? Oh my goodness, look how wide my head is. It like distorts things in ways that we don't necessarily know they're distorted unless we look at it.
Oh, okay. So I love that so much. And I actually now want to read a little excerpt, if that's okay with you. My
Yes.
favorite is in one of my favorites is in the preface. It's
Mhm.
the last two paragraphs of my preface. But this coincides with what you said perfectly. And just a couple moments ago, I was thinking about this and actually wanting to read it
Yes.
because this distortion, this perception of how things are and how they really are most times aren't aligned.
Mm.
So this is on page Roman numeral 6.
Oh, it's right at the beginning with the
Yeah.
letters. Oh,
Yes.
well, this is so beautifully put together. I'm writing a book now, and I'm like, I'm gonna like do my quotes and stuff like this. It looks so fancy with the little quote things. Okay, so I'll stop talking so you can read.
No, I love this. This was a huge passion project. This is another one of those things, right? How many people who are listening, oh, I would love to do that. I can't do that. Stop. Like, if you're driving, keep going if you're driving. But genuinely, do not get in your own way. Do not get in your own way. I know things can be challenging. I know that we might have limitations and barriers. It might take us, an extended period of time, it might take us no time at all. We are, goodness, notorious for comparing ourselves to one another because we're human beings. And genuinely, this is another thing that I talk on the book. We only really see a small sliver of other people's lives.
Oh.
So listening to us talk and like, oh my gosh, you wrote a book, you're writing a book. I wouldn't be able to do that. No, if that's something that you want to do in life, you absolutely can.
Yes.
And sometimes it's leaning on supports to be able to do that. But this is part of that limiting mindset and this belief that, well, they have something that I don't know. That's why I started off. I don't know if this is why I went there, but I'm a human. We're all humans at the end of the day. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are just things that I think some people say, I'm just going to go for it. And other people say, no way would I ever be able to do that. It really is the words that you tell yourself.
Oh.
Because the action will follow when there is something that you really want to do in your life. Again, that's not to negate any barriers. It's not to negate any of the struggles, the time, whatever it may be for you. Don't get in your own way, though. Genuinely, if there's something you want to do in life, you can do it.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'll go back. I'll come back to this.
Where there's
inspiration.
there's a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. It is essential for us to realize that things are not always as they seem. Perspective is not synonymous with absolute reality. I liken this statement to the scene of the man behind the curtain in the film The Wizard of Oz. The focus of the story is on Dorothy and three characters she stumbles upon during her travels: the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion, who are all journeying down the yellow brick road to reach Emerald City. They believe reaching this destination will help them to obtain their deepest desires: Dorothy in finding her way back home, the Scarecrow in acquiring a brain, the Tin Man in gaining a heart, and the Cowardly Lion in obtaining courage. Emerald City represents their idealistic goal or aspiration. Shortly after arrival to the city, the group witnesses this seemingly frightening wizard, initially a large hologram head behind flames, transform to a distressed man scrambling behind a curtain, contorting reality through machines, and making things appear in the manner that he wants them to be perceived, a complete illusion. They ultimately learn that the Wizard of Oz is just fabricating a scary persona as the great, powerful, and all-knowing ruler. I find this to be an eye-opening metaphor. What is being presented to us is not necessarily reality. The more we uncover, the more we realize that we are all just humans scrambling behind the curtain. This text aims to enlighten and awaken us to that which lies behind the curtain.
Oh, Wow, that's so good. And I think about like the Wizard of Oz is we think about like the answers inside of us. You put like a different spin on it to like we think there's this like all knowing like other people have it all like put together. Meanwhile, there's this scrambled person behind the curtain, like with all these trying to make everything
All
work.
of us. All of
Yeah.
us are scrambled humans. And again, I think the start, it's so interesting, just full transparency. Like I do a lot in my bio is a bit intense in
Yeah.
a good way, but like I always feel so like, huh, like just as the real human side, right? Like I love all that I do. I'm very passionate about all that I do. And I know that when someone reads my bio,
Yeah.
there's a perception about me
Yeah.
that I don't see that. I don't see myself that way, but I know like, oh my gosh, you do this and you do that and you do this. And, and I feel like that presents a certain picture. I scramble behind the curtain too. Like
Yeah.
we all scramble behind the curtain. We're all struggling in one way,
Oh,
shape, or form, right? That is part of the human condition. None of us can escape that genuinely. I always say that there's I don't know the exact statistic. What is it? 4 out of 5 people struggle with mental illness.
mhm.
3 out of 5. 5 out of 5 people have
8%.
mental health.
Everybody.
100% of people have mental health. 100% of people have some type of physical ailment at one point in their life. 100% of people have some mental ailment at one point or another in their life. Yes, there are varying degrees. Yes, it is different across the board. And we are all humans at the end of the day. And
Oh,
so I think being able to really see the reality of things is so important. As I was kind of transforming throughout my career, it has been fascinating to just see the reality of things. I would think things were this magical, amazing thing, and they still are. Don't get me wrong. I like to spread my sparkles. Okay. They still can be magical, but just when you actually see the reality behind things, the hope is that it makes you feel more human and less alone.
yeah.
Because I think so many times we as humans are in this space of I'm the only one
Mm,
and what's wrong with me
I'm defective.
versus I'm defective. Yeah. Versus this is a shared human experience. And while it might be a little bit different for different people, we are all in this space together. And the book also talks about compassion and how important it is to really experience compassion. And compassion, I didn't actually really know this until I looked more into it, is experiencing another person's suffering.
Oh,
It's sitting in that space of suffering with another person.
oh, which
So
is
I don't use that
therapy.
word lightly. It
Yeah.
is therapy. Yeah. When I say I'm providing you with compassion, I genuinely mean it to my core. Like I'm going to sit here with you in this space. And while
Mm,
I can't take away your pain, while I can't deep feel your pain, you're not alone. And that's so important in us just getting through it, of course, right? This goes back to what you were saying, how important it is for us as humans to
yeah.
connect with one another, to lean on one another. But also I think it really helps us recognize the shared human experience and the realities behind the curtain.
Oh, that's so good. Did you know? I recently just heard this maybe like a year ago. Like that's the difference between whether someone is traumatized or not. There can be
Mm.
like several people in a similar situation, and the ones that have a connected, caring, compassionate other, it's just a really bad experience. They don't get into that level of trauma to where like their past is present and they're having these physiological reactions. So that's a big deal to be
Yeah.
with someone. The thought of I have to say something you told me. I need to just get it out of my mind so I'm not like tucking it away for later. You told me that you struggle with working like a workaholic, and I share that same thing. But there's a shame that goes to it that has a secondary gain. On the outside, it looks like compliments. It looks like, oh my gosh, look at all you've done. Look at how wonderful you are. You're such a great worker. On the inside, it's that I'm hungry for that I'm good enough that you never can reach. And when you told me that, because, I've lost relationships over it, I've like missed out on big parenting moments, like some stuff I'm not proud of, and it's a reality. And when you shared that, I was like, oh my gosh, Dr. Altvater. She also has a similar pain, and she said it out loud. she
Yeah.
said it out loud in a way to where the world could hear and it could normalize it. And it gave me permission to own it, which allowed me to think, okay, what can I do about it? Where before it was just kind of stuck there. And I got to
Shame.
explore. Yeah, it was the shame, and it was the showing up as a real person. That was, for me, was another instrumental moment, which seems like it's aligned with what you're talking about. Like there's this, like your bio, it is pretty fantastic. I mean, it's amazing. That doesn't happen without a lot of work, though, and what
Yeah.
it takes to sometimes have that. I mean, regardless of what, we all struggle with different things, but when something seems over the top, sometimes it's someone just overdoing things to try to even be good
Mhm.
enough or to matter or to feel like a good person, when in reality, it's those early on like messages that were sent to us.
Absolutely. And then to go to how people perceive us, right? Or how we perceive other people, then we look at people and say, oh, I want what they have, not knowing everything below the surface,
Yeah.
right? The iceberg, everything that it took to get there, all of the maybe unhealthy
Yeah.
coping with that, right? Because you see the, not you, collective you, everyone listening, like you see the accolades, you see that I want.
We lost connection a little
Yep.
bit. Oh,
I
you are
saw
back. You're back. Let me, I'm
that.
just, I'm just going to plug in that. So the last piece that I heard was, people see the accolades and they see all of the like positive pieces, but they may not even know. It might be like that man behind the curtain, the wizard that is just scrambling behind there, and it doesn't always look pretty, nor is it always healthy, regardless of what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And how many times do we never actually recognize that that wizard really is a distressed man? How many times do we just stick with that perspective that the
Mm.
wizard is all knowing? How terrifying, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Or it might not be terrifying, I guess, depending on the circumstance, right? Like whatever our perspective is of what we're looking at becomes reality. But we're just
Mhm.
missing a piece of the puzzle. We're not seeing the scrambling. We have no idea. We're seeing the illusion that is being put out there. So chapter 6 is all about expanding awareness of others.
Mhm.
And it touches on this very concept of we really only see a sliver of other people's lives.
Mm.
So we might be convinced about who they are, but we only see what they choose to show
Yeah.
and our perspective of what they're showing.
Ooh,
One of my
see, that's
favorite
the
quotes,
word.
I might actually misquote it a little bit, but it's a different version of us exists in the minds of everybody that we come across.
Oh, that's interesting to think about, because how many people do you kind of interact with, and you see yourself as like a certain person, but everybody has their own version of you. Well, that's like mind
Absolutely.
blowing.
Absolutely. So recognizing that the things that we think about others and that we see in others may be accurate. We also may be missing a lot of information and filling in the pieces based on our own thoughts and feelings, and then convincing ourselves of that position.
Oh, that's so good. I'm still kind of stuck on the different version. I'm thinking, oh my gosh,
I
that's right.
know.
So what Rachel sees as Jackie, and what my ex-husband sees as Jackie, and what my kids see as Jackie, and what the person at the grocery store sees as Jackie, and my client sees as Jackie, is all different. And it's not even really Jackie. It's whatever their
Mhm.
mix in their. Oh my goodness. This is
Yes.
gonna wake me up in the middle of the night.
Right.
Perspective.
You're welcome. And oopsies. Um, see, talk about the reflective cover. Lots of introspection. Yeah, this book definitely makes you think. And at the end of every chapter, just to let you all know, there are 5 questions, 5 reflective questions that pertain to the information that's provided within the chapter, but for you to reflect inward a bit more with what you read, and then how you can apply that to yourself and develop a more enhanced perspective, accurate perspective about yourself. Because I think a lot of people listening might start to question themselves. Wait, who am I really then? Right?
Oh,
Am I aligned? This is why I am so authentic And so, yes, while different versions of me exist in a lot of different people's minds, I'm also the same person across the board, and as are you, right? Like, I don't try to play a part in a certain, I'm going to be this type of person. Gosh, the amount of times that people who have been close to me are like, "Don't talk to me like you're my therapist." I'm like, I'm not. You don't know how I talk to people in sessions. I'm not. This is just how I am as a human.
Yeah.
So, I provide an authentic version of myself. But what I want to say is
that too. That's interesting.
oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm like, I'm just trying to help you, but not from a therapist perspective, just human to human. But okay, it's a little too close, a little too much. Got it. Noted. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I could go on and on. I'll leave it at that. Like, different people are going to maybe play a certain role depending on where they are. And the more authentic and aligned we are, the more that we really show our full selves and align with our full selves. But I think because of the way that we've been taught about ourselves has formulated an understanding of who we are, we may not actually be very connected with our authenticity, with our true self.
And that's incongruent, which causes some disturbance internally. So I love that this kind of lines that up. I think about the reflective questions. That would be great for a book study, to be able to read a book together and to have these reflective questions, and then maybe come together with some friends or some colleagues and be able to kind of share, like, what was this meaning to me or you, or even for, I think, if like a therapy group or something like that. It's so good.
Yeah.
Now, Rachel, we are almost out of time, but I want to make sure people know where to go to get the book. And I want to tell everyone about the giveaway offer that you so generously provided. So let's start with that, and then we'll talk about where to get the book. So Dr. Altvater has offered to give away 3 books if someone subscribes and just comments, rates the podcast. So that would be on iTunes. So if you subscribe or you put a comment on there, I think I forget what it's called, like a review. That's what it is. Subscribe and review before May 10th, 2023. I'll go through there and I'll randomly pick out a number, and you have an opportunity to read or to have perspective sent to you. And also, this recording is on YouTube. So if you'd like, you can put a comment about it on YouTube, and we're going to pick 2 people that comment before May 10th, 2023. And Rachel's going to send the book out herself, which, thank you, Dr. Altvater.
Yes.
You're the best.
Sign them for you. Nice little message in there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it's beautiful. Just real quick, you did have some that had some sparkly stuff on that. What was the like the bling bling version of them? Was that like...
Oh, I always see like sparkly signed copies. So actually, the people who are going to receive the signed copies it's going to go in a, what is it called? Not holographic. I just call it sparkly, but it's packaging. It's just I cannot speak words. What is it called? Like what you send?
Yeah, like a package. envelope.
Words. See, everyone can write a book, okay? Like, I can't even say the word envelope. Okay, let's talk human experience.
You used up all your good stuff.
See that you put the book in when you send it, an envelope. Yeah, so it's actually like a sparkly pack. Oh, I have one right next to me.
I love it.
So yeah, see, I don't know what this is. It's not holographic.
Oh,
I know those
so
who are listening.
pretty, like rainbow.
No, I call them. Yeah,
Iridescent.
It's my brain rainbow. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Iridescent. Oh, it's
so
shiny.
just the packaging that it's sent in makes it a little extra special, and then I sign the book
because you are extra.
Yes, exactly. I own your authenticity. Yes, exactly. That is why. Precisely.
Okay, so I know there's a couple different options of where to get the book. If you could just let people know how to get the book and mention also like any way people can learn more from you, whether it's through supervision or whatever you have to offer.
Yeah. So the book is primarily on Amazon. Self-Esteem Shop also carries the book, and it's in progress of being placed elsewhere. But for now, that's where it is. And then, of course, you can reach out to me directly. And yeah, honestly, the best way is I have a Beacons page. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, you might be familiar with something called Linktree. It's basically a website where you can link a bunch of different links to it. So it's Beacons, BEACONS.AI / Doc Vader. And then on that page, it has all of my socials. It has information about like who I am and what I do. It has my practice website. It has the different publications, has information about the book. So it basically is an all-encompassing website that can take you to a variety of different places to connect with me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And if you're listening and you didn't write that down or take it all in, it's going to be below this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, or it will be at playtherapycommunity.com. You'll see it in the show notes, or you could just Google Dr. Rachel Altvater Perspectives or Amazon or wherever. That's great. Thank you so much. This has been, like always, like inspiring, and gives me like a touch of like it's okay to be human. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
You're beautiful. I love your message you're putting out in the world, and I love your authenticity.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.